Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the new 8-inch joying head unit that I just installed in my 2009 335i. Going to take a deep look through it, take a look at the specs, at the features, a walkthrough on how to use it, and just an overall review, the positives, the negatives, and my overall thoughts on the device. So here you can see it, just installed in the car. You kind of see how it fits in. It does stick out a little bit, but overall looks pretty good, fits pretty good. So before we get into it, please remember that if you like this, if it was helpful, if you found it informative, take the time to like it and subscribe to my channel. I will be having a full installation tutorial video coming out soon. It goes over the entire process of installing this, installing the microphone, a rear view camera, and goes into depth with removing panels and all of the details that you should need to install this yourself. So like many of these units that are out there on the market, the E90s and countless other brands, this runs, it's basically a tablet, and the tablet is connected to basically the radio and amplifier section of a head unit. So that means that this basic configuration, you'll see for many different cars, they just have slightly different trims and bezels, but they'll be very similar inside. This particular unit is quite a bit different than most of the others out there, though, like the E90s, and there's one big reason that I bought it over the others, and that is that it has a physical volume knob and physical transport control knob. I really, really like to be able to turn the volume up and down with a knob, tap the button, and have things mute. This is, it's my preference. It may not be yours. There are many versions of this that are full touchscreen. They're 9-inch instead of the 8-inch that this is, and they have capacitive touch buttons in place for volume control. This is an 8-inch unit. It runs Android 8.1, and the display is a very, very nice looking 1280 by 720 IPS LCD. And the benefit of the IPS is that the viewing angles are phenomenal. So I'll take you around here. So you can see this from pretty much any angle. And one other neat thing about this that I wasn't sure what to expect is that I don't know if it's a circular polarizer that's used, but the display is polarized in such a way that you can use polarized sunglasses and you can still see it. So in sort of the general orientation of your head, you can still see it. You have to get, okay, so it's not a circular polarizer, but it's 90 degrees compared to what I've seen a lot of things, and heck, even some phones. So that is a huge win when you are driving. Like I said, the screen is very bright and very beautiful. Unfortunately, it's also very reflective, as you can see. When it is sunny out, it's almost infuriating. So I'm going to be trying a matte anti-reflective screen protector to see if that helps. Well, I went ahead and installed an anti-reflective screen protector. I think this one was intended for a laptop. I actually tried two, one for a laptop and one for an iPad. They both worked about the same. They're both too big, so I had to go ahead and cut them down to the dimensions, which were about 7 inches by about 4 inches. Actually, almost exactly. But I went ahead and cut them about 1/8 of an inch over, just to give myself a little bit of wiggle room. It certainly doesn't look the best. It's not the best installation job, but it gets the job done. And it's a little bit annoying in that it does have a degradation on the image quality. However, it makes a big difference in reflectivity. The camera is making it look more dramatic than it looks in person. And if we take a look, the reflection is so much better than it used to be. So I might keep looking for a different screen protector, one that doesn't have quite the grain. This has a little bit of grain to it. It's certainly not horrific. It's difficult to show on camera. The big thing being you can see the difference in reflectivity just from the black bezel above this down onto the screen. So not perfect, not my ideal solution, but it makes a big enough difference that I'm definitely going to keep it. And I would highly, highly recommend, if you're going to do this, get yourself one of these screen protectors. One of the two biggest complaints I had was how reflective the screen was, and this seems to have taken care of that. I have not had it outside in the sun yet. It's raining here today. So if that changes, once I get it out into the sun, I'll make an update. I'll probably put it into the description down below. And actually, any updates that I have from hearing from Joying or anything else, I will add to the description down below. It also runs Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and these are built in. You don't need a separate dongle. Joying offers two versions of this head unit, what they call the standard and the high end. So the standard does not have Android Auto or CarPlay built in. It does claim to have screen mirroring. However, the screen mirroring using Easy Connect does not work with Android 10, something that was changed in Android 10. So even though it says that it has that, it does, as long as you don't have an Android 10 phone. But this is the high-end unit, which integrates the Android Auto and CarPlay. And, a lot of the other units out there support it, but you have to have buy an extra USB dongle, and this doesn't. So it's got a couple of other, tricks up its sleeve. I guess it's not really a trick, but it has your 4-channel preamp outs. It has a wiring harness that plugs directly into the BMW factory harness. So it is plug and play, including a CAN decoder. So you can quite literally plug this thing in, turn it on, and you have steering wheel controls, and you have sound coming out of your speakers. I had a few hiccups, and we'll get into those later and in more detail in the install video that I'm going to be making. So it's also got the sub preamp out, and something that a lot of head units don't have and doesn't matter to most of us, but if you are an audio geek, then you might want it. It has a SPDIF output, so that is a digital audio output. So you can go into basically your own DAC and processing system without going through this unit's amplifiers. It has 2 USB ports in the back. One is for USB OTG. It's got a micro SD card slot. It has Bluetooth 5.1 with an integrated antenna. And this, again, for the high-end unit, supports Category 7 LTE. So that means that it supports data connections to 300 megabits down, 150 megabits up. And it's got a pair of antennas, the primary and the diversity antenna. There is a separate little, I don't know what to call it, kind of a dongle that comes out of the back of it that is used to store a SIM card. I currently have one for testing through US Mobile, and it works great. So that's sort of the general overview. For you spec nerds, I'll get into a bit more detail on what is inside of this thing, what the guts are. If you are not a spec nerd, then jump ahead to the time that I have on the screen, and you can skip over all the boring technical jibber-jabber. So this unit runs an Intel-based octa-core 1.8 gigahertz processor. This is different than an awful lot of the units that are out there. The Intel chip is somewhat unique out on the market, that it seems to perform very well, but it doesn't have quite the support that you'll find for some of the other Rockchip-based units. The chip it's a system-on-chip made by Unisoc. It's the SC9853i. It runs on the Intel Airmont architecture, which was released in 2017 and phased out in 2017. This has built-in support for Category 7 LTE, which is how this thing is able to have its cellular connectivity. And the GPU is a dual-core Mali T820 MP2. Nothing particularly special about that GPU, but it seems to get the job done. The standard unit comes with 2 gigabytes of LPDDR4 RAM. The high-end version, which this is, comes with 4 gigabytes of LPDDR4 RAM. And likewise, you can get this, and the standard version has 32 gigs of built-in flash memory, but the high-end unit here comes with 64 gigs of built-in eMMC flash memory. The amplifier chip is surprisingly good. I wasn't expecting to have name brand chips in here. Now, that being said, I have not popped open the case, so I can't verify this. It's based on their specs. But the amplifier is an ST Microelectronics TDA7851L. It's a quad output at 48 watts
per channel max at 4 ohms, which is it's a class AB amplifier. It looks to be a fairly good chip, certainly not the best out on the market, but it is much better than I expected. For the radio tuner, it uses an ST Micro TDA7786. Looking at the datasheet for this, there didn't seem to be anything particularly amazing about it. The DSP that comes with this is probably the most interesting, and it's a Rohm BU32107, and it is designed specifically as a DSP for car audio applications. And something that this unit has that some units do and some units don't is the ability to do time alignment. And that's another reason I picked this over some of the others like E90. This chip is why it's able to do time alignment. It has native support for time alignment up to 10.6 milliseconds per channel when it's operating in 4-channel mode. It also is what supports the spit if out, and it has a native what they call surround mode. You'll see that when we get into the walkthrough of the unit, basically the software just does some simple control of the chip. The native surround mode in the chip or in the DSP is done utilizing time alignment and IIR filters, or infinite impulse response filters. So it seems to be pre-baked and it works okay. I'm, again, pleasantly surprised. Go ahead and cover some of the high points of this, because I'm sure that's what you want to know, what I think of it. We'll get to the conclusion at the end of the video. But general high points about this unit. The screen is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and it is bright with phenomenal viewing angles and works with polarized sunglasses. I don't know what else you could ask for in a screen for something like this. I might say it's a little too bright for night, that it would be nice if it could dim down a little bit more, but overall, the screen is phenomenal. The interface is also fairly snappy. I've got a number of things installed on this, which did seem to slow it down just a little bit, but as you can see, it works well, it's snappy, it's responsive, which was also one of my fears, that I'm going to get something that is slow and sluggish. The Wi-Fi connectivity, the Bluetooth connectivity, and the LTE connectivity are great, as well as Android Auto. It gives a whole bunch of different options for how to connect to the internet, how to consume media, as well as the built-in SD card slot. The Android Auto support is pretty good. I won't say it's phenomenal. The built-in app they call Z-Link is pretty good. There are some weirdisms with it that I'm not fond of, but overall it does work. It does work as advertised, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The volume knob. The volume knob is amazing. I don't know, maybe I'm just the only one out there, but I love having a volume knob. I hate buttons exclusively for volume. I don't mind them for anything else, but for volume, I like a knob. It supports Bluetooth 5.1, which is pretty impressive. That being said, it definitely doesn't take advantage of everything Bluetooth 5.1 has to offer. Again, we'll get into some of these details later. It has support for a reverse camera, which is nice. It also has support for a secondary camera input, if you were to run a dash cam or something. So the reverse camera does take a second to identify, and the lag with the black screen is because of how the relay that I have in place to handle turning that camera on and off. And you'll see it can have dynamic parking lines. You can adjust these lines. I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. I found it in the settings, but I don't know necessarily how to set the camera to be representative of my distances from objects. It is truly plug and play, and I cannot tell you how nice that is. I've always had to go and cut harnesses, or not cut harnesses, but get a snap-in harness, and then you have to splice them, and you got to solder them and heat shrink them if you want them to be good connections. And it is a royal pain. But this comes out of the box with a pre-made harness with a CAN bus interface box. You'll see in the install video, it also comes with a very, very long power cord that is between the harness for the joying unit and the harness for the car. It's long so that you can go ahead and run it straight to the battery if you want. Joying advertises a 2-second turn on, and they're not lying with that, with one big caveat. So if we go and turn this off, bam, it's on. That's awesome. But that only works if it's connected to power. Otherwise, I believe it stays on for 20 minutes. 10 or 20 minutes, it will stay on, and then it will go into a full shutdown if you have it powered through the built-in harness and not run back to the battery. So it does turn on very fast if it's in standby mode. I've not measured the amount of current in standby mode. That's something I'll probably do, but I can't imagine it will be that high or have any significant effect on the battery. The sound quality is improved so much over the factory head unit. I mean, it is night and day how good this car's stereo sounds compared to the factory head unit. It's certainly not a $5,000 or $10,000 stereo system, but it's night and day. I cannot express, and you can't get it over video, just how much of a difference that this thing has made in the sound quality of this car. And this did not have the Logic 7 system. If it does, these are not compatible because that uses fiber optics to communicate. This does not. This plugs into the standard front left, front right, rear left, rear right wires that go to the factory amplifier. It also has a built-in amplifier if you want to use that, if you don't have the factory amp. I believe that will work, but you'd have to double check with Joying. It has the ability to do time delay on speakers, which is awesome. It's not necessarily the most robust or detailed way of doing time alignment, but it does allow you to do it. It shows you things like open doors. So, okay, a little bit of a lag there. Normally that doesn't happen, but it will show you the open doors. If you have parking sensors, it also supports those. I do not. The voice commands work very well. The factory mic sounds okay. People can understand me. They say I don't sound phenomenal, but they can definitely understand me, and Google Now or Google Assistant voice commands work extremely well. It also has support for an OBD2 interface, and the GPS and LTE work well. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. Overall, this thing just works well. It certainly has some quirks that we'll get into later, but for now, we're going to get into sort of a tour through the interface and through the features of the device. So I've already done a lot of customization to this, but this is the general launcher that you see with this device. I've added a number of my own applications on here. It comes with Google Maps pre-installed, Google Search, Chrome. It came with its own kind of odd navigation app that I promptly uninstalled and don't remember what it's called. So this is the general interface. You have your main screen, which you can make multiple screens, and just like on a lot of phones, you can make folders, which is nice. That is your persistent apps button, so that will take you through your list of all of the apps that you have installed on the device, as well as widgets and whatnot. You have a home button that will take you back. You have a back button that, well, takes you back. The music button takes you to the stock music player app, which I do not like, and I've not seen a way to remap that yet. Home, navigation, this Navi button, you can remap to whatever navigation application you want. In my case, it's Google Maps. For whatever reason, Google Maps is pretty sluggish, but it does work. It does get you there. Google Maps integration through Android Auto is way better, and presumably through Apple CarPlay as well. You have a button for your phone that takes you to the Bluetooth calling app. You have a button for your radio. This is probably... So that will take you straight to the radio, and it will stay playing keep on playing once you leave. You have this mode button, which cycles you through a number of different players, apps, and whatnot. I've not found a way to customize that, and I would really like to. And then finally, you have this dim button here, which sets between three brightnesses that are not significantly different. And I know that you can't see, on the display, you can't get a real concept of the brightness difference because of the camera. I wish the screen got a little bit darker. I really do. That would be a huge, huge boon to this thing. I shouldn't say huge. It would be a nice thing to have. So, in general, that's the basic interface, right? You can swipe down, just like on Android. Most Android, you can turn the screen off, and that will come back on when you touch it. You can turn mobile data on and off, Wi-Fi on and off, reboot it, or put it into standby, like if you shut the car off. Okay, so here we have the Bluetooth music app that it comes with. It works fine. This supports Bluetooth 5.1, which is awesome. Unfortunately, it does not have built-in support for any of the audio codecs that take advantage of Bluetooth 5.1 and its increased bitrate. It uses SBC as its streaming codec, and that caps the bitrate at 320 kilobits per second. You can get that on previous iterations of Bluetooth with much lower bandwidth. So there's no real advantage to Bluetooth 5. If it would support aptX HD or LDAC, those are some high-quality audio codecs, then it would take advantage of that Bluetooth 5.1, and I would love to see that, though I think that those require licensing agreements, which is probably why they're not included, so they didn't have to pay for them. Otherwise, the Bluetooth 5.1, it's a wash. It doesn't really mean much of anything. The increased distance means nothing because you're in the car. It's not like you have a reason to be streaming from 30 feet away. So the phone app, it works like a phone app. This is how you go and do your Bluetooth connections. It's pretty janky. You can set your Bluetooth connections and they tend to disappear out of here. You can't see them after a while, and I don't know why. This will pair to my phone. I've got it to pair to their OBD2 reader that I purchased when I got this. However, for some reason, it seems to not be willing to pair or interface with either of my other two OBD2 readers. One of them is the VP, and then one of them is the Carly. It simply wants no part of it, and I don't know why. So that's pretty frustrating. Let's see what's worked through here. The Android Auto app that they have is called Z-Link. It's what allows your phone to integrate with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. It works okay. Like I said, we'll look at that a bit later. It supports, I've got Play Music on here, YouTube Music, Pandora, my podcast app, the Google Search app, and like I said, the voice search, I'll use the button from the steering wheel. What time is it?
The time is 6:42 p.m.
That works very well. One of the apps that's on this is called Car Info, and it's an interesting one. So it's got trip computer, system configuration information, time format, and seat heating. I don't have heated seats in this car. If you did, presumably you could control them from this, the same way it interacts over CAN bus with everything else. So the trip computer information, this is actually pulling information from the car's trip computer. This is not internal to the unit. The system configuration information is the most interesting, and frankly is the biggest problem I have with this unit. I wouldn't call it a deal breaker, but it's close, and I'm frankly really surprised and frustrated that Joying allows this to happen. I have reached out to them about a couple of things, this being one of them, and the response I got on this was that the default units are metric and they can't be of the head unit, and they can't be changed, which I think they may have misunderstood. So I'll be reaching out to them again. So in this, you can see distance units. I can change kilometers, miles, fuel consumption, kilometers per liter, miles per gallon US, which from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And this actually brings up one of the strangest little quirks. So right up here, you have the temperature. Again, that is being pulled from the car. That's not the unit itself. So when it's in Celsius, you have 27C. Makes sense. When I switch it back to Fahrenheit, the C never changes. So the temperature changes, but it stays showing as 80 Celsius, which I sure hope it's not in here. That's a minor thing, right? It doesn't really matter. But so when you go and you restart this system, it will completely reset the car into metric units. So right now, as you can see, we are set to miles per hour. So I'm going to go ahead and switch the distance unit here to kilometers per hour. And as you can see, the car switched. Now if I go through the car's menu, right, and switch back to miles per hour, and we go back, you can see that it has changed to miles per hour again. However, when I reboot this thing, it will reset all of these to metric, and I cannot understand why. I don't know why. I just don't understand. And it's clearly based on the head unit because it occurs partway through boot up. So we'll go ahead and demonstrate this right now. Try and show. See if I can get everything in the screen. So go ahead and the boot time on this, just to be clear, is not the boot time that you would necessarily see. I have a 256 gig micro SD card in here, and putting that in seems to have significantly increased the boot up time, which doesn't surprise me, and frankly, I don't have a problem with. So we're going to go ahead and reboot. Sure. One other neat little thing, right? You can change the boot logo. So it's got most manufacturers' logos in the system. But ignore the fly if you can hear it. So while we're booting here, in just a second, you're going to see it switch over to back to kilometers per. There it goes. So it has reset all of the units. You can see back to Celsius. And the best I figure is that it is issuing a reset command. The car has the option to do that. So if we go to set, I can reset. So I think my best guess is that's what it's doing. And there's no reason it should do that. So if you're going to have this thing powered straight off the battery, not an issue. A minor annoyance at times. If, however, you're going to have it powered so it shuts itself off completely, that's going to be a major, major problem. And like I said, I'm going to reach out to Joying again and see if they can figure out what the heck this is and if they can fix it. Because it's almost unacceptable. So, again, I'll have another clip that shows the boot time of the unit when it's not got the SD card in it. Otherwise, you can see that took a little while. But again, if you have it hooked up the way I think they intend, it's not a big deal. You have your 2-second boot. 2-second or less. Specific to this unit itself, this goes for any of these. If you remove the factory head unit in this car, you do get the SOS error. So you get that SOS warning. That is part of that, they call it SOS system, because it can't see it anymore. Because you interfered with the MOST bus, which is the optical connection that the car uses to talk to different modules. And the stereo, to my understanding, is the host of that. So the only way to get rid of that is to have somebody, either yourself or have somebody else code it out. I haven't figured that out yet, but it is on the list. So if I want to reset my units, I can do it easier than in the car by coming in here, right, in kilometers, miles per gallon US, Fahrenheit, and there we go. This is their widget. That doesn't change. So I guess let's go ahead and look at the equalizer. So this right here is it. So it's got 16, band EQ. It allows you to change, so you can have independent control of the front and rear speakers, and loudness. I did not like loudness personally, and it's got some a number of pre-baked profiles. Surround mode here. This is interesting. This is what I would consider time alignment, in that it has you showing the distance from what I believe is the distance from a speaker to your seating position. Kind of. I think it's actually the relative difference. So to me, while this is it says centimeters, this looks like a traditional time alignment. So we've got the rear right speaker firing first, which would make sense because it is the farthest away from me. And then it delays these two. And these two are fairly, I would say, equidistant to me. So it fires that one, delays, fires these, and then delays the longest to fire that. So I don't know why it says centimeters. It is clearly time alignment. This rear horn surround strength is what I believe is interfacing with the onboard DSP's surround function. It does a little bit. The biggest effect is it tends to make the rear speakers louder or softer. I found the default setting to be pretty good. Bass enhancement, so you can go ahead and set basically how much of a change in enhancement you want, and you can set the frequency that you want to target within some presets. Field is just your fade and balance. It's got some presets. You can move it with the arrows, or you can drag it around. And bass filter, this I haven't played with this, but I believe this is basically a crossover. So there's quite a bit for audio control in this. Way more than I would expect at the price point. And again, that comes down to that Roam DSP chip. Okay, so one of the things that I know people are really interested in are the steering wheel controls and whether or not they still function. And I am happy to say that yes, they do. And they work straight out of the box, right? There's absolutely there's nothing you have to do. That CAN bus decoder box seems to take care of everything. So you can plug this thing in, and we'll get some royalty-free music going here so I don't get a copyright strike. So, and we can do transport controls. Works like a charm. The phone button. Here, we'll take you to the phone app. And there is one of the bugs that is in this. I talked to Joying about it and thought it was just Pandora, but it's clearly not. When you go to the phone app, some applications will mute or they'll pause the music, stop it, and go into phone. Others, though, will basically pause, switch over to phone. Phone has its own volume setting, and then it will restart at whatever volume the phone was at. Again, last I tried it, I thought it was just Pandora. It is not just Pandora. So Joying had thought also that it was just Pandora or a bug with Pandora. It does not happen with their built-in apps. So, I mean, to their credit, it doesn't happen. However, that is a huge annoyance because I know a lot of people will be using a third-party music player. And then, so we've got our mode button here. So this basically takes you through the same thing that we had for this mode button. And then voice control is snappy. It works great. What time is it?
3 p.m.
Okay, let's try that again with the volume not muted. What time is it?
The time is 7:23 p.m.
So there you go. That is quick, snappy, and works great. So that's steering wheel controls. I mean, I couldn't be happier with them. It just works, which is part of what I wanted when I bought this unit. So one of my other gripes with this is that there is a little bit of noise that comes from the speakers when music is not playing and the volume is not muted. It goes silent if the volume is muted, so presumably it is actually shutting off that the audio outputs either from the DAC or the amplifier chip. But when it's on, you can hear some digital noise, very much like if you had a cell phone next to an old stereo. I'm not sure if you can hear it here, but we're going to try. And so if I go ahead and turn the volume all the way down, you can hear that hiss went away, as did the clicking. I turn the volume up one notch, comes back. I can crank it all the way up and there's no difference. So this is some kind of noise floor. And it's definitely annoying if you're sitting still in a very quiet area. But to be totally honest, while it's annoying sitting here, as soon as I put something on, as soon as I go ahead and start driving, as soon as the air conditioning is on, anything like that, you simply can't hear it. So should it be there? I don't feel like it should. Is it a problem? No, not really. So I'd categorize it as an annoyance at best, or at worst. We'll go ahead and dig through the settings here, of which there are plenty. Some things that you would like aren't there. They seem to have stripped the Android settings down pretty far, but the basics are here, right? So you can do your basic Wi-Fi controls. You can track data usage like an Android, and you can put data warnings in caps, your SIM card info. Under device here, you have basic display controls, wallpaper brightness, sound. It comes with a really annoying keypad beep on by default. That has to get turned off immediately. There's a loud function, the function to turn on and off the internal amplifier. Because I'm using the factory amp, I don't need it. Power conditioning and this number, I don't actually know what that does. Subwoofer control, I don't have a subwoofer. And the equalizer takes you back to that equalizer app. Under general here, just some lots of basic functions. So you can have navigation start when you first turn it on. You can require the handbrake to be up to play video in motion. I imagine most people would leave that off. You can have the screen displayed while it's or the time displayed while it's in standby. You can reverse the rear view image, so flip it left to right. You can have it give you a sound while you're reversing, you can have it mute the audio while you're reversing, or you can have it set a volume level while you're reversing. Backlight control, they have what they call time control and small light control. Small light control is using the car's, basically the car's interior lights, right? So when the interior lights are, or when your driving lights are on, you have backlights on the buttons, and when they're off, you don't. Otherwise, it will do it by time. we have the ability to go in and set a default volume whenever you boot up. I have that off. GPS mix, I believe, lets you use either GPS or GPS and GLaNOS. GLaNOS, I'm not entirely certain how you pronounce that, but I'm not sure. Sound mixing scale, I'm also not entirely certain what that does. These lantern settings are the lights for, or are the colors for your buttons on the side, so you can go ahead and change those up. It's got some presets, or the auto will let it sort of cycle through different colors. Steering wheel settings here. This has been a little bit interesting. I had to talk to Joying about this as well. On this particular unit, these will all show as null because you cannot remap the steering wheel buttons. Because this is a BMW specific unit. Were this a universal unit, they said you would be able to, but for this unit they are fixed. Navi app, this is where you can select what navigation app you want. Map data copy, if you have a map application that lets you store stuff locally in that way, that's how you would do it. User is just your normal basic Android user settings, accounts, backup, location permissions. System, date and time, your accessibility options, about device. So this is Android 8.1. The display is 1280 by 720. There's the CPU info, that 1.8 gigahertz octa-core with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage. So those are the basic settings. So now we come to this one called Factory, and this lets you get into many more of the system settings, the settings that were put together by Joying. And it has a password. They tell you what the password is, or you can look it up. In this case, I believe for all of their units, it is 3368. So hit 3368, confirm. And that's going to bring us into a list, and we'll just go through it. Original car agreement. So this basically goes through and shows you all of the different integrated car functions. I don't have parking sensors, so I turned off radar display, reverse parking line. You can static trace is whether or not the that overlay graphic, that parking overlay graphic, will be fixed or it will move. Tell it driver's door position, door warnings on and off. AC information doesn't seem to do anything for me. I'm not entirely certain the car audio type, what that is. Reversal volume, I think, is... I'm not certain what reverse volume is. Anyway, so there is the car agreement. This car model is what lets you decide what, basically how it handles the CAN bus. So CAN box type, car brand, car model, and then in our case, for this car, there's only one option for the CAN box. Antenna normally on. I believe this handles the antenna amplifier power, but I'm not certain. Other people have reported having major issues with radio reception for terrestrial FM radio. I have not. I have this set to on, so that may or may not do something there. So this HD reversing video format, again, I'm not certain about. Boot screen logo. This is where you can go in and change what car brand you have. You can set the screen, basically colors and brightness, touchscreen calibration, panel key learning. I am not entirely certain about. So I believe you know, I'm just not certain about this. I have to go in and figure it out a little more. Let's see. So if you have a front camera, it gives you the option for front camera view. Some of these other settings, again, I'm not entirely certain what they do. Reverse power supply. I think that this may have a way to supply power to a reverse camera on its own. I am not certain. I powered mine from a relay to the battery off of the reverse lights. MCU upgrade, and there are some other passwords that you can get, that you can find listed online for some of these other functions. So like backlight current, I assume that would let me adjust the brightness of the display, but I don't know yet. I haven't gotten into it. Some basic USB things. Let's see. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it in there. Somewhere in one of these, and I do not remember where, there was the option to reverse the volume, sorry, not the volume buttons, but the track up and down, because by default it will, on the steering wheel, when you hit track up, it goes back. And I think the concept being that if you have a list of tracks, when you hit up, you're going back up the list, and down goes down the list. But that is completely counter to everything that I'm used to. So there is a setting buried in here somewhere, and I wish I remembered where it was. If I did, I would tell you. That lets you go ahead and flip those. A couple of other small things to show you that this comes with. One is this operation guide. It's pretty limited, but it does have some general instructions for how to use the system, which is nice. Let's see here. So you can, yeah, just basics of how to use it, nothing too in-depth. This control also brings you to the steering wheel controls, which again in the BMW specific version don't actually do anything. Oh, and what else? There was the built-in video player, which I've not used. The other thing that's in here is this touch assistant. So that lets you actually turn it on and off. And the touch assistant is this little widget here that you can move around. And it pops up with these options, so you can do split screen, go to the settings for this app, go home, go back, accelerate, simply clears memory. Yeah, it's do screenshots and whatnot. I do not like it personally, so I go in and you can take display button and turn it off. Personally, I'm also not a big fan of their launcher, so looking at a couple of others. One of the ones I'm looking at is this a Gamma car launcher, which is pretty slick. I think it looks a little overdone personally, but I don't know. It seems a bit more friendly. I don't have the right word, but I think I like it more. You know, we'll see. It's a launcher. That's about all there is to it. And there are a couple of others out there if you don't like the factory one, so you aren't stuck with it. So say you decided that you don't like the factory interface and you do want to go to a different launcher, there is a way to make that happen. So if you go into your settings, into general, at the bottom there's this option for launcher selection, and you can click that and it will let you pick which of the home launchers you want to use. I'll go ahead and take a look at Android Auto. Like I mentioned before, Android Auto on this is handled with an application that they call Z-Link. So I've got that right here. It's already hooked into my phone, so it'll fire right up. For me, it always fires up into Google Maps. I've not had any other real experiences with Android Auto, so I'm kind of learning as I go. The home button and so these other buttons around here still handle going into the head unit itself. So you'd have to go back in. The home button for Android Auto is down here. So we'll go ahead and hit that. And so we see the Android Auto applications that I have available. It's running a little sluggish right now, more than normal, and I'm pretty sure that is because I am trying to film in 4K 60 and run Android Auto at the same time. So, some more of our royalty-free music here. You know, it works just fine. The volume is quite touchy, but you know, like I said before, also this thing sounds worlds better than the factory stereo. There's so much more depth. There's so much more bass. It certainly isn't the best sounding system that I've ever heard, but then again, the speakers are not terribly good in the middle of the road system for this BMW. So that's Android Auto. There's not too much more to go through with it. One quirk, that if you hit the phone button there or the phone button on the steering wheel, and I'm not going to do it, for whatever reason, while in Android Auto, it immediately calls the last number that you called. It doesn't bring up an option. If you want to make a phone call in Android Auto here, you have to either use the voice commands or go to the phone app. Otherwise, like I said, you end up auto-dialing the last person that you talked to. One other small issue that I'm having is in Android Auto with the Google Assistant voice. For some reason, the voice is distorted. It sounds like it is clipping, like it's turned up too high, or the volume is turned up too high on it. Nothing else does this. The music doesn't. Audio, when you're playing videos, doesn't. It's just the voice. And here's a chance for you to hear it.
Right now in Columbus, it's 75 and clear. The forecast tonight is around 70 and partly cloudy.
So there you go. You can hear it's rather distorted. I'd love to find a fix for this. I have not talked to Joying about it yet. I'm going to, and if I end up hearing from them and or if I'm able to get that email out before I edit this video, then I'll include an update. If not, I'll include an update in the video description when I do hear back about it. One other gripe that I have with this, and again, this is in no way unique to the Joying unit. Pretty much all of the E90 series head units that I have seen, at least the current generation, use this exact same mounting bracket bezel system, is that the way the screen is placed, it is vertical, but the viewing angle from the driving position is pretty poor. So you can see how steep of an angle it is to be looking at the screen. So that kind of stinks. And the mounting bracket, the way that it mounts, blocks the numbers on the HVAC temperature control. So you see you have to lean down. It's not as extreme to look down as the camera makes it look, but you do have to lean down in order to be able to see those. I am hoping that I can find a way to adjust that. But for now, it just is what it is, and it's an annoyance, but worth dealing with for all of the other features. Throughout this whole process, there have been a couple of hiccups. The first being that the bracket for the HVAC controls that I received was defective, and it was missing 2 holes that needed to be drilled in to mount it. I'll cut over to some other information here in just a minute, showing what I'm talking about. And I'll go more in depth on that and how I dealt with it in my install video. So it was missing 2 holes, as well as it was missing screws to attach 2 little tabs that you have to assemble.
this bracket is supposed to have 2 holes in it. And that's the same thing I've seen on other install videos. And mine does not. So I went ahead and marked out and drilled a couple of holes. Come on, focus. So those should be in the right place or darn close.
The other issue that I had is with the harness and plugging it in. I was having some intermittent audio connection issues to the front and rear passenger side speakers. I've been in contact with Joying about these, and I cannot say enough good things about their customer service and how prompt they are. I've not necessarily gotten an answer that is what I was hoping for every time, but they are on the ball with responding. You never quite know what you're going to get when you go with one of these companies that you've never heard of on the other side of the world. But every email that I have sent them, they have responded, gosh, before 10 a.m. Shenzhen time. And I don't know what more I could ask for as far as a company being communicative. So they definitely stand behind their products. They offered to send me a replacement bracket and a replacement harness. In the meantime, they suggested that I bend the pins on the harness a little bit, and that does seem to have alleviated the issue mostly. There's some slight intermittent connection issues over a bump or something, but that helped a lot. Final thoughts on this Joying head unit for the BMW E90 series. Overall, I like it. I think it's a pretty good unit, and for the price, it really can't be beat. You know, this high-end unit is $360, and to even come close to that with a domestic product would include needing an interface module for CAN to get steering wheel controls, plus a head unit, and it'd be well north of $500 or $600. So for $360 shipped to the US, it took about a week to get. That's absolutely worth it, and it's worth dealing with the software bugs. That being said, I'm really hoping that Joying is willing to listen to feedback and address some of these small bugs. And I hope that other people's experience is a little bit better in that they don't get parts that are incorrect. However, with that being said, again, Joying has been very, very good to deal with, and I can't fault them too much. Everybody makes mistakes, things happen, so getting a defective part, it can happen with anybody. And what really matters to me is how the customer service is when dealing with those issues after the fact. So based on that, I would absolutely recommend this. You've seen some of its good things, you've seen some of the issues with it, and I'll let you make your own determination based on that. I know this video has been pretty long, but I really wanted to go through an in-depth review of the unit and an in-depth walkthrough of it so people can see everything, all the software features, and how to interact with it, and the positives and the negatives, because I've not found many videos out there that really go in depth. There are a couple, but they're not this exact unit. There are many more for the E90 units, and I don't believe I've found one at all that looks into Android Auto, only Apple CarPlay. So yeah, in my opinion, it's worth buying, and love to see Joying continue to tweak the software, update it, and take this from a good unit to a phenomenal unit. If you like this video, if you found it helpful or informative, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Feel free to comment. I will do my best to respond and answer any questions that you may have about this unit, anything that I may have missed. And remember that I have a very detailed install video coming out shortly that will go over the whole installation process for this and the reverse camera that I put in, and how to remove panels, and pretty much the entire process. So keep looking forward for that, and we'll get into it.